All set.
Okay, I'm Lawrence Willett, Chairman of the Connecticut Licensing Board for Home Inspectors, and I call the meeting of our licensing board on December 14th at about 9:30. And I guess we have to swear in a member. Is that our first order?
Okay, who's being sworn in again? That's my
Tim
job.
Needham,
Tim Needham.
Okay,
the bald
perfect.
head guy.
All right, are you ready? If you could raise your right hand, please. Okay, you solemnly swear or solemnly and sincerely affirm, as the case may be, that you will faithfully discharge according to law your duties as board member to the best of your abilities, so help you God, or upon penalty of perjury.
I do.
Congratulations, you're official.
Thanks.
Okay. Is that the end of your acceptance speech?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Congratulations, Tim.
I'll try to make more meetings than the previous predecessor.
Okay, so we have a review of our minutes from our previous meeting. Has everyone had a chance to maybe look those over?
I'll make a motion to accept it.
Okay,
I
do we have a
second it.
second?
I
Okay.
second it.
Okay, all approved? Aye.
Aye.
So that was Bruce and Rich.
Bruce
Correct.
and Rich, yes. So do we have any comments or concerns from anyone? Any person present today? I guess not. Okay, so we have then our DCP Investigation Division Complaint Status Report. Everyone got a copy of that, I assume?
Mhm.
Is anyone to review that for us, Bob, or is that something that,
Anita, do you have any? There we go.
Yep, no, good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning,
Yes.
board members. Welcome, Mr. Needham, to the board. The report is for the time frame September 1st, 2021 to October 31st, 2021. During that time frame, we received 2 new complaints that are still open and under investigation. The investigator closed the one file that you have the information on the report. For file number 2021-290, it was a third-party complaint. The investigator found no violations. He indicated in his comments, the respondent did not violate his regulations and did not go outside his authority. The complainant was the seller and for whatever reason took issues with the findings in the report. And the investigator found that there were no violations.
okay. All right,
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the report, I guess.
yeah, is that what we normally do, is accept this report? If we have a motion, do we have a second?
Typically, we don't. I mean, you could. if
Yeah, I
you
wasn't
want
sure
to.
about that.
Yeah, it's usually just presented as a point of fact, but
All right, let's go with that, what we've been doing in the past then. All right.
Okay.
Um,
Mr. Chairman, do any of the board members have any questions or are we all set?
I think we're probably all set. I just wanted to offer up some thanks for sending that information on a previous question we had. That was
Oh, you're
helpful in
welcome.
understanding. That was helpful in understanding a bit more of that. It was just an unusual complaint. So I think we can move on. Old business. We have our continuing discussion of our amendments to the regulations. So with that, I think Cynthia is here to help us with that.
Right, so did everyone receive the documents I sent out yesterday? Was everyone able to open it?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so so basically there were 7 areas that we're proposing to amend for 2 things. To update the rules for licensed home inspectors notifying the board and in so doing, the department of when the supervision of a home inspector intern has been terminated. So that was the last order. But the first 6 were really to come into compliance with the statute that was passed, the bill that was passed in May or June, I believe, of this year, that updates smoke detector legislation so that it requires home inspectors to report on the status of, or at least the presence of smoke detectors. We're also incorporating carbon monoxide detectors. I've gone back and forth with Larry a few times on some edits, but it's by no means final. If anyone else has any ideas of any other areas that you think need editing or an update, now is the time to do it, since we're going to submit everything all at once.
Should we be mentioning a standard? I mean, you know, what we've written so far is basically, are they there? How many they are? We're not going to dismantle it. We're going to, if we can't identify that it's 10 years old, we got to tell them. But is there a standard by which we're going to go, saying there needs to be one in every bedroom, on every floor?
No.
Right. The bill doesn't require that. The statute, as it's rewritten or amended at this point, doesn't require that there's like a minimum number required. What it's requiring is that the home inspector report on their presence, not that there's a standard of, that might be something that's under like the fire marshal, you know, but that's not something that's, you know, encompassed in
So,
these regulations.
I mean, as an inspector, you know, you're going to say, okay, there's two smoke detectors. We don't even know if they're carbon monoxide detector, and 2 of the bedrooms and 1 in the hall. And then you're going to get a call saying, is it, you know, well, okay, you identified it. Is that sufficient?
That's right. Larry, if you want to address that, I believe that the
Yeah.
purpose is to, you know, to set up, to establish a minimum standard
Yeah.
of the reporting on it, not so much that there's a requirement on their presence.
Yeah, I think that's a key thing, is that we're establishing minimal requirements, and I want to stress that so that inspectors aren't somehow open to some issues down the road. So hopefully we can keep these new implementations minimal. And so we don't really know. I mean, Bruce or any of us, just you know, let me know. But if you're walking under a smoke detector or a detector, do you know, is it battery operated? Is it electric? Is it part of a security system? Is it a combined carbon monoxide and smoke? Do we know by walking past it, other than trying to take it apart? I say we do not know. And so we do not know what type. And so therein, I think, is as far as we want to go. That's why we're not required to test it, because we don't know what type it is.
I agree with you, Larry. I think that we want to keep the standards very minimal. I agree 100%. I think when it finally, you know, gets implemented, we as a board should say, hey, look, here are the standards. It is minimal. We want you to be aware of the fire, you know, the fire marshal says there should be one on every floor, and they should be tested, you know, yearly. And if they are older than 10 years, they should be replaced. But we're not asking you to identify or do it. But I think in everybody's report, there should be something that says, you know, it meets the standards. We meet the standards. But you may want to go a little further and accumulate some more information with your local fire department, or get somebody, a specialist in, to identify it. It's up to today's standards.
Right. I agree with that. I think that should be at the discretion, though, of each and every one of us. In other words, we comply with the regulation that we're going to say how many there are, where they're located, that we're unable to test because of the regulation, and that we're unable to determine the date in accordance with the regulation. And then each inspector can then go on and say whatever they want, whatever they can recommend, whatever they want to recommend. But I don't think it's part of our regulation to say what they should recommend.
No, I agree with that 100%. But I mean, I think you are running a liability if it's in the hallway, one's on each floor, you tell them that, and then you don't say there should have been one in every bedroom, or at least get them in the direction that they should find that out.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that would be at the discretion of each inspector
Well, that's
to say-
fine. I'm
to say
just
what they would
talking-
like.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Maybe, as a board, we can come up with some terminology everybody
Yeah.
can use universally, and we'll go from there. But,
Yeah.
I agree with you, and I'm fine with,
Well, we
you
just want to try to avoid making whatever we're reporting to make it look like we're, code compliant, which
no,
we're
I
not.
agree, and I'll make a motion to accept the difference if that's what we need to do.
Yeah, I don't think at this point we need to,
Yeah,
I
we're
think
not
we want
there
to just
yet.
review all this and then we'll accept these things once we have them all together. We'll have a
Okay.
vote on their acceptance. I think that'd be the best procedure.
And if I could just jump in, I can forward to all of you the language that was amended in the House Bill 6600 that added this requirement. I should have attached that yesterday, but it's a very minimal requirement. It's basically 4 sentences, that sets a minimum standard for reporting. Not so much, like you said, it's not code enforcement.
Right.
And a couple of years ago, I know that we put together, between the board and we put together a notice for home inspectors to, like an advisory memo for how to handle interns and their supervision, sorry, and their reporting. So, once this is all final, we could probably do that again and put together a memo that could go out to licensed home inspectors saying, these are the amended regulations, this was the purpose of it. And, you can add information for them, maybe give them, some information, meaning like they can supplement their own reports with guidance on code to be implemented by the homeowner, not, to clarify that this is not technically exhaustive of what the code is on smoke detector regulations and carbon monoxide regulation.
Yeah, those minimal requirements that are in the law, they are actually on the pages that you sent to us, Cynthia. It actually would be under number 5, interior.
Right,
And
that's right.
And what we're adding is C. And I didn't know if that would present better if it was just in a linear format rather than in a paragraph format. But at any rate, that is what we need to cover. And anything beyond that, I think, should be at the discretion of the home inspector. Consult with the local fire marshal regarding specific location recommendations, or consult with the manufacturer of the product for their recommendation. There can be a whole bunch of different things guys may want to add. But I think as a minimal thing, we want to cover those actual 4 or 5 things. But I think maybe what would be good for us to discuss is how we came across some of these things, and like starting with the definitions. I think that's where we need to make some amendments, and we looked at our current regs define alarm systems, and to be compliant with the law, we thought that the law states warning equipment. It doesn't define or talk about alarm systems. So that was an amendment that we wanted to perhaps make. And if you look at the proposed definition, we remove alarm systems and we define warning equipment. And there was a few things in that kind of bothered me. One of them was other spillage detectors, which is in the original definition of the alarm systems. And I'm not sure if that could be interpreted and again, I'm always looking at somebody making a complaint and hire an attorney, and the attorney is looking at this and looking at any way they can kind of, trap us or whatever. But other spillage detectors, I mean, that to me suggests that maybe water could be involved in this definition. Because there are systems that, sump systems that have alarms on the floor. Sometimes there's a water heater that may have a water sensor on the floor. And I don't know that we want to lump those things into this new minimum standard. What do you guys think about that? I had proposed removing spillage detectors. I also proposed removing ejector pumps. Ejector pumps are not warning equipment. It's a mechanical device. Some of them may have a warning device as part of it, but not all of them do. And so I would propose that we remove ejector pumps from a new definition.
Well, why aren't we putting, right in here, it says, inspectors not required to determine the following: the type of warning equipment or operation of any warning equipment. And then the proposed amendment is that, the 5 things that they are required to do. So the type of warning equipment, the inspector is not required to determine the following, an operation. So isn't that?
Where are you
included?
reading from, Bruce? Where are you reading from?
That's the number 6.
Oh, number 6.
Amendment to general limitations and exclusion,
Right,
section 2491-13.
right.
So in that, the inspector is not required to determine the following: the type of any warning equipment
Right.
or the operation of any warning equipment. So if
Right.
if you wanted to, you could include, which would include, spillage, or, it could even be, they could even have a detection system on their oil tank, or, or a moisture.
Well,
meter.
again, what is the intent of this new law? I mean, and if that's intended, then we have to include those things in our total count. Because we have to count and report how many warning equipment devices there are. So do we have to look around and say, yeah, there's one for the water heater, there's one for the sump pump, there's one for this, that, and the other?
Well, I'm saying we should exclude it. I'm saying it shouldn't be.
That's why we're removing it from the definition.
Right, but why don't we make it clearer and just put it right into the, the inspector's not required?
Yeah, to list
Yeah.
various
actually,
things like that.
Yeah, you could. I mean, why not? The clearer we are, the better we are. The inspector is not required to determine, flue gases or other spillage like water or any liquid that might be on the floor. We're not, responsible to even identify or test it.
Yeah, well, we can add that. We can, but I think it also helps to be clear in the definition of warning equipment. We're
Yeah, I
saying what it
agree.
is and what it isn't.
Yeah, I agree. You took it out. That was a good thing. Now you put it in that we're not required to do it. It makes it even clearer.
Right, and if we all agree and stuff, we can add some more specific components, I guess, is what you're maybe saying could be added to make it clearer that these aren't part of something as part of this this new amendment, this new
Yeah,
law.
we don't want to do security systems. We don't want to do ejection pumps. We don't want to do flue gases, and we don't want to do spillage detectors.
Yeah,
You want to definitely put in, I would think, something to the effect, not limited to.
that's in there. Yeah, that's the.
If you forget one item,
Yeah,
or 3 years down the road, a new technology comes out and we don't update it in time, and someone didn't inspect it or didn't get qualified or doesn't qualify under that definition, is that going to open us up too? You know,
Yeah.
these,
Anything that can make this clearer, that all we're doing is, identifying the number of detectors, not the kind of detectors, the age, if we can't find the age, to say we can't find it, whether it was tested or not tested, which are limited to fire and carbon monoxide detectors.
So I just have a quick question about that. So the way that I read what we're adding is, because what the statute called for was to report on the presence of smoke detection, carbon monoxide warning equipment. Like, why does that, how do I phrase it? Like, how do we then exclude, like, what's the basis for excluding the other spillage whatever detectors, or like, why are those things to be removed? Because we're adding the requirement for the smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, because we're going to have to justify that.
Because
You
it's
know what I mean?
it's a little confusing, and when you don't want to have a, you don't want, it was similar to that language we had about the asbestos.
Oh.
We're just trying to make it as clear as possible on what we are responsible to do and what we aren't.
Yeah. Well, in the language in the bill, it actually says, establish a minimum and uniform standard for a home inspection. The minimum and uniform standard for a home inspection shall include a requirement that a home inspector report on the presence of smoke detection and warning equipment.
I see. Okay.
That's it. So it doesn't specify carbon monoxide. It does say smoke detection, but it says warning equipment. So that's why we need to define warning equipment. So that
I was reading the warning equipment to be also like subsumed within the smoke detection and carbon monoxide. But since I don't know this terminology, you guys clearly do. Okay, so the warning equipment the spillage detection and all of that falls under warning equipment, and therefore you'd like to remove the other spill. Okay, I get it.
what if you
it
just
could, I mean, go ahead, Tim.
I was just saying, what if you remove the warning equipment and just spell out the items that we are going to inspect, and then no other warning equipment will be inspected, or not liable to be inspected, or not required to be inspected, meaning that these are the only things we are inspecting, and any additional warning equipment is not part of the regulation. And that will cover anything in the future other than smoke detectors and fire detectors.
Right, so if we narrow the definition of warning equipment and then put the, like Bruce was saying, to add to the list of what's generally limited and excluded.
But we can
narrow the
write
list
that
of
list.
warning
That was
equipment.
something I had asked Cynthia early on. The language in the law states warning equipment. And I had asked if that has to be included, or if we can change it, or and if you remember, the law is the law. We can't change the language in the law. So we can amend the regulations to fit the law. And that's why alarm systems at the beginning, I mean, that's what's in our regulation, alarm system. And alarm systems does not show up in the new amendment anywhere. So that's why we had thought of maybe going to warning equipment. But if we want to list out what is not part of it or considered warning equipment, then I think that that's a good thing. The other part of it that I was a little bit concerned about in terms of we have some components that actually shut systems down when they're deficient. Now, is that considered warning equipment? And I'm not so certain that is. Take, for example, a power vent on an oil boiler. That may shut down the system if it's not venting properly.
That's a safety device.
It's a safety device. That's right. It's not really a
It's not a
warning
warning
device.
equipment.
Right. So maybe we add, as part of our definition, warning equipment means an audible device. And then as we define it, it's something that's giving out some type of an alert that is warning people of whatever condition.
Larry, in the regulations, I see where it says current definition 20, dash 491.1. Now, I see that in it. Now, that's a definition. Where in the standards does it refer to that?
I don't know. We'd have to look through. I
It's
can't
gotta be-
pinpoint it exactly right now, Bruce.
No, I understand that, but I mean, that's exactly what we're talking about here, is that we make a definition, then there should be something here, in the electrical, it
I
says.
know
the
it showed up in section 2041-7 of our electrical system.
Right, that says the inspector shall report on the absence of smoke detectors.
Well, no, but then E says the
Right.
inspector is not required to inspect the remote control devices unless the device is the only control device, comma, the alarm systems and components, comma, the low voltage wiring systems and components. So alarm system shows up there. And again, in our proposal, we're proposing to change that to any warning equipment.
Well, that's where,
But
by
I,
changing that wording, that's what's opening the door for everything.
right, so why aren't we covered right now by having a definition that says alarm systems mean warning devices? So installed or freestanding. So an alarm system means warning devices installed or freestanding, which include the following, but not limited to. And then you go to the electrical and it says the inspector shall, the inspector is not required to inspect remote controls unless the device is the only controlled device, comma, alarm systems. So it's saying right there, it's pretty clear, we're not doing alarm systems. And then it goes to the definition. It says alarm systems mean warning devices, which include the following. So what's not clear about that?
I mean, that can be clear. That's clear.
I mean, that's where we're playing with this electrical systems, but the current definitions, that 20-491-1 and
Well, once you change warning system means, then the whole regulations don't comply together. Because you say
Not sure I
warning
understand.
equipment means devices, and then later on you refer to is not required to, inspect alarm systems. So where's the alarm system definition going to be if you're changing it?
There isn't one. Alarm systems is going to be warning equipment.
Right, but I mean, it
That's
doesn't-
just a
but that's not
proposal,
what-
but
But that's not what it's referring here. It's not saying,
remember, we can't change the law. So we have to have warning equipment in there. That's what the law says.
okay, well then why aren't we defining, instead of changing the other one, if it's saying warning equipment, why aren't we just saying warning equipment means?
yeah, definition of what we're
Yeah.
calling the warning equipment.
Yeah, warning equipment would include smoke detectors,
So are
carbon
you,
monoxide detectors, and leave it at that.
okay, so you're thinking that alarm system stays as is, alarm systems as it is. And then we write a new definition for warning equipment?
Yeah, because I think we're covered. And once you start to like mess around with alarm systems, the definition, then it doesn't coordinate with what's in the electrical section.
mean, this thing just becomes a.
Well, the more you look
Can
at
of
it, the
worms.
more, yeah, well,
But it is a good point that, you know, if it's going to be mentioned anywhere in the regs, it should be defined clearly what it is.
Yeah, so I agree with that. I agree with that, but it should be different than a alarm system means warning device. You know, then you may put like a warning device, you know, warning equipment relating to smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors.
um, so, so maybe we're proposing that we take smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors and define those under warning equipment.
Yeah,
And that-
you know, so alarm systems mean devices installed free or standing, including but not limited to.
Right,
You know, if we wanted to, you know, maybe we take out the carbon monoxide detectors and smoke alarms and take that out of the definition of alarm systems.
okay,
And then we put it into a warning equipment, which would include these devices, which would be carbon monoxide detectors and smoke detectors, alarms. So then it's a totally separate section. It's a totally separate regulation. And now we put it in there as, okay, you have warning equipment that means smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. What part of that are we required to do or not required to do? And that's where the, you know, later on in the definition or in the regulation,
Yeah.
it says proposed amendment, the inspector shall report on warning devices, you know, presence of smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors, which are defined in the definitions as warning devices.
yeah.
Right.
Well, I think we can collectively put warning equipment and have carbon monoxide and smoke detectors. I think security equipment should be in there as a definition because it is warning equipment. And remember, it's just a definition. Just by defining something, it doesn't mean we're required to do something.
Yeah, but that would stay under an alarm system.
But alarm system, you know, we're defining alarm system. If we take out the carbon monoxide and the smoke alarms and we keep it as an alarm system, which means, I guess it's the problem is, well, this one says warning devices. Warning devices, and the other one may say warning equipment. Warning equipment and warning devices. That's where you're splitting hairs.
I don't know what the difference is.
Warning devices and warning equipment. Well, I guess we're making up the definition. We're doing that ourselves. We're saying alarm system means warning devices. Warning equipment is going to mean smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors.
And that's it.
And limited to those two, and not meaning any other devices.
Right.
Mhm.
That seems logical.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we definitely have to separate them from the rest of the stuff.
Okay.
And then the new regulations are going to require that you do something with the warning equipment. And that's where you're going to put in the regulations that then now you define what is inspector have to do and what don't they do? You know, what's required of them of these warning equipment and what's not. And then somebody said, well, what do you mean? What's a warning equipment? Then they come to the definition and it's going to say warning equipment means smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors and no other devices.
Okay. Okay.
So
Yeah, I
in
guess-
terms, sorry, in terms of alarm systems, keep the definition as the original definition, or just take out the carbon monoxide detectors?
You take out the
And-
carbon monoxide detectors and the smoke detectors and you leave
Mhm.
everything else,
Okay.
because I think it's pretty clear that we say in the electrical section, the inspector is not required to do alarm systems and components. And then when they go to their definition of alarm systems means a warning device, then you're covered because you're not required to do gas, fuel, gas, other spillage device, which may include water or oil. I don't know if you want to make it even clearer.
Right.
You could say that security, let's say it says security systems. We don't want to be anywhere near a security system, whether it's a Ring doorbell or, a monitor. We don't want to do that. Ejector pumps and ejector pumps.
Right.
I don't know.
See, once you start redefining things and changing this around, like Rick was saying, then you got to go the whole route. You got to change a lot of regulations. You got to change words throughout the whole, regulations, because everything's got to match. You can't all of a sudden now, then you're gonna, if you don't, if you change that, then where's the definition for alarm systems?
That's what I'm saying. I'm just struggling with alarm and warning. What is the difference?
Well, that's what I mean. Are we able to define it? Can't we define it ourselves and then the words match?
Well, that new bill is what screwed everything up by calling it warning equipment.
Well, we're stuck with that though.
Well, that's,
Can't change it.
But we're defining it. We're making it very clear. You say warning equipment, you mean smoke detectors and carbon monoxide. You said to me, warning devices. Warning devices is a much bigger definition. It could be any kind of warning device. It could be a Ring doorbell. It could be, it could be a camera that identifies you on your phone or something. I don't know, but it could be all these other things. So I just don't think that, we're going to be taken to court because somebody says, well, you don't know the difference between a warning device and a warning equipment. We'd have to say, yes, we do. We knew that was very close. That's why we defined it very clearly.
can we state that new law that took effect somehow
In what way?
as far as the definition? I mean, that per such and such a bill, warning equipment means,
Right, that's the issue, is that it's not defined in the bill. It just says smoke detection and warning equipment, and that's like a standalone phrase, and it's not defined as to what warning equipment is. So it's true that it is to be defined in the regs, and you have the ability to define that to make it clear for everyone.
Right. So if we do that, if we're saying the warning equipment means the following, we're not conflicting with the bill whatsoever. We're just making it clearer.
You're just defining exactly what warning equipment is. Right.
Are we? Okay, go ahead, Tim.
I was just saying, under alarm systems, can't we just put means devices and remove the word warning? Alarm systems means devices installed or freestanding, including, and just to remove that word warning.
And then also you might want to take out carbon monoxide detectors
and smoke and carbon monoxide.
and smoke alarms, and then only use warning equipment. And then you can go into a definition. Warning equipment is this and not anything else.
Correct. That's right. That might be the better way to do it.
And just remove the word warning devices, remove the
Right.
word warning.
Yeah,
That way
Take
there's no-
devices out.
make
Or
it-
take
That's
warning
fine.
out,
I
right.
mean, if we're going to change it, by taking out carbon monoxide and smoke alarms, we could certainly take out warning, and then there's no conflict.
Exactly.
And then you're isolating the things that we want to focus on, which are the carbon monoxide and the smoke detectors.
Right.
Right. And we still have a definition in there of alarm systems, and we still say in here, we don't do alarm systems.
Right. They're just, they're devices. We don't have to say that they're warning devices.
Warning.
They're
I'm
just
making-
devices that do this.
I'm making notes to edit all of this and send it back to
Okay.
you all.
Okay. So we'll still end up then with two definitions one for alarm systems and one for warning equipment.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Right, because it's a good point that it's later on, it's described as, not having to be inspected by the home inspector, so it should be defined.
The alarm systems.
Yeah, the alarm systems. And then, with warning equipment, I could also break down where it goes on to say smoke detection equipment means an alarm device that blah, 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 and also a definition of carbon monoxide. I could break those into separate definitions also, so that, I could leave it in one place, but I think there are sticklers in the regulations once they get reviewed higher up that there should be one definition per, so that we could amend the rest of the regs to include smoke detection and carbon monoxide detection. And then warning equipment gets a standalone definition.
Okay.
Well, just keep in mind, there are devices that do both smoke and carbon monoxide.
I think that spillage detector needs to be further defined, because it sounded like in our earlier conversation, we were suggesting that might include like sump pumps or other water leak detectors. And I don't know if that's necessarily what that's describing there. It sounds more like it's flue gas or other type of combustion exhaust
Right.
detection.
So that can be more specifically defined or taken out.
Well, if you just took out and other, just do flue gas, comma, spill
Yeah.
detectors, comma, security equipment, comma. Because that would cover spillage detectors would cover anything that would be
So
spilled.
it would say flue gas spillage detectors.
They would be two different things.
Yeah,
And other.
Well, that's
So
what
we
it says now.
So we could
Huh?
define, but we could further define spillage detectors in the definitions. Is that what you're saying? Like as a separate
If
definition?
it's either separate it from flue gas and let
Right.
it be a standalone thing, spillage, which could cover anything, including combustion
Mhm.
gas or water.
That's what we want to avoid. We
Well,
don't want
flue-
water. We don't want
Well,
that
that-
interpretation. I think we want to define that
And then we should define it better, that it's limited to, flue gases or combustion byproducts.
But the alarm system is devices we do not inspect.
Right, but
So
Right.
if it covers water, that's fine, 'cause we don't inspect water spillage or oil spillage or.
We just don't do it.
okay.
Right, but I think the point is if we can define the spillage detector so that everybody's super clear that, you're not required to inspect that, we could just add a definition for spillage detector.
Within the alarm definition, or a whole different one,
no.
Oh,
in
oh,
the
separate.
alarm.
Oh,
all separate.
we
Then
could do
you have-
separate or
That's,
within the alarm.
But once you separate it, then it's got to coordinate with the rest of the standards. So in the standards, under electrical, it would say, we do not inspect remote control devices, alarm systems or components, low voltage systems, ancillary wiring system components not a part of the primary electrical power distribution system. Are you saying we need to add to that now spillage detectors and those kind of things?
No.
Well, in that paragraph there, basically it's eliminating them anyway.
Yeah, but if you define them as something different than in part of
Then
the,
it needs to
in the
be-
alarm definition, then it's a different device. It's different.
Right.
If you keep it in alarm, then it's classified within the alarm definition.
Yeah,
So basically what you were saying, Mark, was flue gas, comma, take out the and
Take out other,
Other-
just make it and spillage
and
detectors, not
spillage detectors, right? Okay.
Flue gas and spillage detectors.
Okay.
All right.
I think it looks fine the way it is, but
All right, so again, we're gonna have
So,
alarm systems as a definition, and we're gonna have warning equipment as a definition.
mhm.
Okay. And so the law says that in terms of these other requirements, in terms of counting and specifying location, and whether or not we're testing, that's all going to apply to warning equipment. Right.
Correct. Yes.
can you put warning equipment and then or parentheses, carbon monoxide detectors and smoke alarms?
We don't want to even put parentheses. You want it to be very clear. This includes the following:
It's in there.
smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors.
Right,
You don't
Just-
want it
or this
unclear.
pertains to
Okay.
warning equipment pertaining to and carbon monoxide or smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors?
Yeah, well, it says here, the first line, warning equipment means devices installed freestanding, including but not limited to. So I don't know if we wanted to open that one up.
Well,
So why don't we say means devices installed freestanding includes smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors and no other devices?
correct.
Yeah,
Mhm.
take out flue gas and security equipment.
Yeah,
Yeah, take that out and say it only, you want to make it clear, it only is going to be smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors.
and then in that definition,
You could define smoke detector equipment means an alarm device that automatically detects and gives a warning, for warning.
correct,
of
that's
the
one
presence-
paragraph, and then another paragraph for the carbon monoxide.
Yeah, and then carbon monoxide equipment means an alarm that automatically detects and gives warning present. So you're just defining those two, and that's
Those
it.
two,
Mhm.
So
Right,
we would
that's
have
it.
warning equipment perhaps, and then A would be smoke detector equipment means blah, blah, blah. B, carbon monoxide detection equipment means blah, blah, blah. So that would all fall under the warning equipment definition.
yeah,
You could do that. Warning that means installing freestanding, including A, a smoke detector, B, a carbon monoxide detector, and no other devices.
Um, All right.
Should we add a definition of combined? Like, should we mention that there's equipment that combines the two? Or leave it alone?
warning equipment.
We could say standalone or combined
Right?
Yeah.
in the definition.
Yeah, you could say that. It means installed or freestanding, including, which includes either a combination smoke and carbon monoxide
Mhm.
detector. Well, you could put A, smoke detector, B, carbon monoxide, and you could say, and
Combination of the two.
sometimes they're
Yeah.
both of those in one device,
Yeah,
but limited to only those two devices.
okay.
So we're talking about the definition section, correct, in the regulation 20,
Yeah,
that's 491?
Correct.
right.
Proposed definition.
Proposed, right now, the ones that go up to 28
Right.
Right.
definitions, okay. Trying to be sure where we're,
Yeah. But again, these are definitions. They're not really responsibilities of the home inspector. We're defining things.
So they can go back to it and see what we're including or not including.
Right.
Right.
Describes, okay, then you go describe means.
Do you maybe want to add in warning equipment means an audible device? Because then that again helps rule out some of these other things that may shut down the equipment, but they don't give an audible warning.
But if you just limit it to smoke detectors and carbon monoxide,
So you don't have to worry about that.
yeah,
Uh,
No
just,
other
just for clarity, and so someone can't come back and say, well, you know, this
I think
this
by-
flooded my basement and you didn't tell me about it.
Well, how do we
Well,
know
you-
if it's even audible or not audible, Larry? How are you gonna even define that? How are you gonna determine that?
Just whatever the term audible, how it's defined, gives off a
No, but I'm
noise.
saying you're an inspector, you go into a house and you see some device. How are you knowing it's audible or not audible?
Right, I've got a smoke detector. I got smoke detectors that tie into my alarm system that they don't go off. The alarm system goes off.
Right, I have a Ring doorbell one, it goes right into the Ring doorbell.
Right.
Well, what's the difference between gives a warning versus audible?
Because you have a lot of, there are deaf
What's the
people who
warning?
have, now they have smoke
Right.
detectors, alarm system with blinking lights, you know, the lights flashing and there's
Okay,
no, you know,
Correct.
okay. Okay,
It could be a flashing light. You don't know if
Yeah.
it's,
right,
Yeah.
right, okay.
I think by saying warning, though, you're,
you're covering all bases.
That's
Covering it
covering
all.
it, yeah, yeah. I have never seen one of those, but sure.
No, they're out there. I haven't seen one either, but I know they have.
Yep.
Okay, so Cynthia, there's some work to do on this definition.
I got it. I got the
Definition
notes.
number 1. That's- we- I think what's helpful too, when we rewrite some of this, Cynthia, it'd be to, either put whatever's being taken out in brackets and whatever's being put in,
Mhm.
maybe make it red or whatever.
Yeah. From now on, I'll use track changes. It's just in the past, whenever I've sent out, not to this particular board, but when I've sent out track changes to people, they're like, just send me a clean copy, so I try.
Yeah.
So a lot of people hate reading track changes, but no, yeah, I can do that so that it's more clear what's being removed and what's being put in.
Yeah, so, so the alarm system, we're taking out carbon monoxide detectors and smoke detectors. We're gonna specifically define those under warning equipment. You guys want to leave ejector pumps in alarm systems?
Mhm.
yeah.
You do? Okay, I do not. But whatever, I don't know how we go about doing that.
Well, do you,
What
do you-
is it? What is an ejector pump? How is that an alarm system?
There's devices that go into those to say it's not working. Ejection pump, there's like a device that you can have that says your injection pump is not working anymore.
right,
So we don't want to be required to identify it or even be part of that. So we're not
Yeah.
talking about not testing an injection pump. We're just saying that we're not going to give you any information on any device that's connected to that ejection pump. That is a warning, that is an alarm system thing.
Okay, so if you want to defend all that by having to say that, or it's not even there, but so I don't know. I'm okay. I'm
but
okay
if-
with it, I guess.
but if you
But we
don't,
really need to really define all these other things, like you mentioned, the ring systems and perhaps whatever else. That may be similar to an ejector pump in that here's a component that's pumping liquid or whatever, but it has as part of it this alarm. We're gonna have to include some other stuff, septic ones, different things like that, so that it's very clear that these are alarm systems that we're not doing anything with.
It says included but not limited to.
Okay,
Included but not limited to. I don't know about you guys. I mean, I have had one complaint about an ejection pump. And that one, and that's what the complaint was. The complaint actually was, why didn't you tell us that there's no warning device on that ejection pump? That's what the complaint was, because they moved into the house, it didn't work and it flooded their basement. And they said, come on, you should have told us there's no warning device.
was there a warning device and it just didn't operate?
No, there was no warning device.
Okay, I point that out when I see one of those because that's an important thing.
Well, I understand that, but we shouldn't be responsible for saying whether it's a warning device or not, it's your, that's your call. I think it's a good call. I think probably you're going to put that in every one of our reports from now on, is that you should have one, but I don't want to be held responsible for telling them that. What happens if somebody misses it? Then are you required to pay for their damage or their ejection pump and put in an alarm system?
I don't know.
I mean,
What's that?
the deeper we dig into this thing, the more worms
Right.
we come out of there,
Well, I understand, but you take something out of there, then it's
I
not.
know,
clearly-
I
it's
wouldn't
not
take it out.
clearly defined.
I wouldn't take it out. I'd leave it in there.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking at, the whole thing here, Larry, is you're saying, let's make this as minimal as possible. So we're not held responsible for, a more stringent requirement. Isn't that basically
Yeah.
what we're doing?
Yeah,
And-
hopefully.
Right. And by taking things out, you're going to open yourself up to more liability.
Well, I don't know. I mean, if it's not in there, why are you opening up yourself to more? If it's in
Becau-
there, ejector pumps, I don't know that an ejector pump has an alarm on it. How do you guys know that?
You don't.
You're right.
I'm
Well, Rich,
saying
you said you report it. Rich, you said you report it.
If
Right.
I don't see one on there, I tell them that they should have one.
Yeah, I do the same thing.
Okay.
And there is a test button on them, which is the homeowner can test with. So if you don't
On
test that,
ejector pumps for a basement bathroom. Is that's what I'm talking about as an ejector pump.
yeah, there should be a float in there that tells them if it's not working.
That's an upgrade though. That's not required.
Yeah, but
It's nothing more than an upgrade though.
All right, if it's not required, then, the consensus is to leave it, fine, we leave it. And again, there's a bunch of other things that we're not putting in that's gonna be included but not limited to, so we're kind of stuck with that anyway.
well, that's just a common thing that you do find that you run into that, and by not putting it on there, I think that you're opening yourself up to
Yeah,
some.
I've never,
Well, that's
Never
almost
done
like
that.
telling the client that they can't use the toilet if you have a power outage.
Yeah,
And that's
I always warn on that. I says, you don't have any power, don't be, if you're on city water,
well, if you don't have power, your alarm's not gonna work either. So
no,
if they're stupid enough to use it during a power outage and the alarm doesn't go off, they're gonna.
Yeah, I know.
okay. All right, so there's work to do on definition number 1 there. Anything on definition number 2?
As in warning equipment? Oh, definition number 2, sorry.
Describe.
Yeah.
We're proposing adding the inspector is not required to determine the type of any warning equipment.
Okay, so that will match the definition in 1, so that seems fine.
Okay. The only thing we'd be adding to definition number 3 is that the inspector is not required to dismantle
That's fine.
Yeah,
any
That's
warning
good.
equipment.
You're adding warning equipment, which is what you need to do because it relates to number 1.
So the inspector is not required to inspect the remote control, the alarm. Do we want to say the alarm systems or any alarm systems and warning equipment?
Yes,
Because the way this is proposed is that we're replacing alarm systems.
no, you got to leave alarm system in
Yeah.
and you put,
Mhm.
Okay,
So not required to inspect remote control devices is the only, is the only control device. Any warning equipment and components, should be alarm equipment and components.
Alarm systems, warning equipment, and components.
Yeah, but
Right.
I don't
No,
understand this. It says it's not required to inspect unless the device is the only control. I mean, we are required to inspect warning equipment. So why are we saying we're not?
I think this is under the electrical systems now. I think this is remote controls that could be,
But we're not inspecting it, Bruce. We're only, we're noting that it's there, observing it. That, I think that's what we're talking about here,
We're
correct?
not required to inspect. But I mean, once you mention it, and you,
the way I'm looking at this, and just as an example, is suppose you have a ceiling fan and it's got a remote. But you can operate the ceiling fan by just reaching up and turning on the fan.
right, so
I
how
think
is
that's
that?
what we're supposed to do. We're not required to determine that remote actually works.
No, I understand that. So is not required to inspect the remote control unless the device is the only controlled device.
Right.
So you're saying if you have a ceiling fan and there's no switch and it's only by a remote control, you got to inspect it?
That's how I interpret that.
You don't turn those on with a remote?
I'm saying, yeah, I'm just it's talking about the definition here.
You don't have to.
Any warning equipment or component. So
The way I interpret that, again, it's not really related to warning equipment. There's a comma there.
yeah, but I mean, you're talking about a remote control for a smoke detector, a carbon monoxide detector?
No, I don't think we are. I don't think that is talking about that. I
No.
think that's
Any-
talking about, in general, remote control devices. And whether or not they're the only controlling device, then we inspect them. If they're not the only controlling device, then the remote is not our responsibility. If the ceiling fan is 20 feet in the air and we can't turn it on, and there's a remote, then we're supposed to try the remote to see if the fan works.
No, I understand that, but if you're
Yeah.
gonna put in, you're making a definition that warning equipment is smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors, then how's it relate to this?
It's just another part of it. Just take that out. Just start that definition. Say the home inspector is not required to inspect any warning equipment. Forget about the remote control stuff. It's not related to the warning equipment, but it's in the paragraph in terms of electrically what a guy doesn't have to inspect. And that the remote control devices is not connected to the warning equipment and the alarm system components. And
Right,
that's
it's
how I
just- it's-
interpret it. Maybe I'm misinterpreting. I don't know.
No,
Well,
I see it the same way.
you
It's just listing off in the paragraph under the electrical system, you know, what's not required to be inspected, not that it's related to the remote control devices.
Right. Yeah.
Right, so are you saying that identifying the location, all the things that we're required to do is not inspecting the warning equipment?
They're not required to inspect the warning equipment?
Yeah, it
Is that what
says
you're
here, the
saying?
inspector is not required to, you're just saying remote controls are just one of the things, but what is this saying? The inspector is not required to inspect. And then it says the remote control thing, then there's a comma, any warning equipment. And then we define warning equipment as smoke
Well,
detectors.
you're reading the proposed definition. What's the
No, I
original?
I understand.
Right, because what you're doing is what's required by the law is that that the home inspector report on the presence of the smoke detection and warning equipment, specify where it is, the total number, whether the inspector is able to test it, and whether you're able to verify it.
So
That
what
it's
happens if you
less than
test
10
it? What
years
happens
old.
if there's a button on it and you test it, right? Is that,
What are
Is
we,
that right, is that an inspection? You know,
I would think the inspector is inspecting it. If they're looking at it, trying it, and if they can't try it, they identify it, but they're still inspecting it.
all right, what part of this paragraph are you talking about, Bruce?
The
When you say a
proposed
button,
definition-
a button of what?
I'm saying under electrical systems, you're saying the proposed definition.
Yeah.
And you're saying the inspector is not required to inspect. And again, you're telling me that the remote control, I understand what you're talking about to a fan, but then it has a comma. So
Right.
is the remote control not cool, not like, it's not incorporated in this any warning equipment that stands alone, any warning
Right.
equipment?
Yeah, it's a separate thing.
Right, right.
So if it's a separate thing, aren't you saying the inspector is not required to inspect any warning equipment?
That's what it's saying
That's what
here.
it's saying.
That's what it says in the original definition as well.
Well, it says, well, in the original one, it was alarm
Alarm
system.
systems and components.
Yeah,
But now we would say alarm systems and warning equipment.
Right.
Okay.
but I'm
Well,
saying, how do you say that you're not inspecting it if you're actually looking at it and, reporting on it? I think
not-
that,
You're only reporting on the presence. You're not reporting on the, whether it's, we're not going to test it. You're not going to press the button. And then, what happens if the fire department comes?
no, I got that. The presence of the detector, total number, whether the inspector is able to test it or not. So are you saying that every inspection of smoke and carbon monoxide, you're not going to push the button now?
Oh,
No, no way.
No,
What?
No, I'm not.
No, I
Yeah.
understand that, but are you saying that every single inspection you're gonna just put in there as standard? We were unable to test this?
Well, let's go back to the definitions. I read the definition for inspect. There is one. It says it means to examine readily accessible components or systems and components of a building in accordance with home inspection statutes and our sections, inclusive of the regulations, using normal operating controls and opening readily accessible panels.
well,
That's
on
it.
an alarm system, the normal operating controls is the test button.
Yep.
On a smoke detector.
Well,
But it
then
also
maybe we
falls
need to
under
make
low
some,
voltage.
I think
Huh?
you're not, you gotta be clear about this. Are you, I know there's guys out there who push the button.
yeah. And
So-
they can go ahead and keep doing that if they want, but our regulations need to say that they don't have to. So
Right,
this is where
so-
we need to,
So, but
we
you're not
need
even, you're not even be clear about that, Larry. You're just saying whether or not you're able to.
Yeah.
You're not saying don't test it. You're saying whether you're able to.
I'm gonna be saying I'm unable to based on our regulations. Because our regulations say we don't have to.
Well, where does it say you don't have to push the button?
It's gonna say it in the amendment to general limitations and exclusions.
Inspector's not required to determine the type of warning or the operation of any warning equipment. So you're saying you're not required to test it there? Is that where that is, the operation of any warning equipment? So
Yep.
you're not required to.
And it would also, it's also
Type of
gonna,
it.
it
So
would also
you-
be in the electrical system. You're not required.
So I think then if you want to do that, you say well, first of all, I don't think it's clear where it says not required to inspect remote controlled devices unless the device is only, well, I guess so. So that's your first one. Then you'd have any warning equipment, comma, and then you'd have alarm system and components.
Right,
You have to put both of them in. You don't
Right.
take it out.
right, right.
Okay, so you could do
Yeah.
it that way.
Yeah, we're not required to inspect.
Because
Yeah.
we've put a new definition of warning equipment, which is smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors.
Right, so you put any
you
warning.
gotta-
equipment
gotta
and then you
la-
put
label
comma
that.
alarm- Yeah, comma alarm systems and components.
so
Yep.
quick question while I'm keeping up and making notes to edit this. So since it's under the electrical systems, are we really saying, are we only talking about like hardwired smoke and carbon monoxide detectors?
No.
Or should we
All-
clarify
we're
that?
talking
Or
about all smoke detectors and carbon monoxide. Because
under
we're
electrical?
we're not even saying we could identify the type of equipment. We're not saying they're hardwired or battery
Right,
operated.
it says that they're not part of the primary electrical power distribution system, basically. So that anything that any of the other stuff falls into that.
Right.
Okay, so you're okay with just keeping alarm systems and adding warning equipment also, correct?
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Can I ask a question about 5, if I can jump ahead? Is it possible to change 4 and 5 there?
4 and
Because in most cases, I would say whether the inspector is able to test such equipment implies that they're always required to test the equipment. And I think
Yeah,
based
yeah,
on what
whether,
we're-
exactly.
based on what we're talking about here, we're talking about what we're gonna be now required to report on the presence of the warning equipment and the location of the equipment and the total number of the equipment. Are we still gonna be required to, because I think most people will say we were not able to determine if it was working, and we were not able to determine how old it is for whatever
Right.
reason. I think most inspectors are gonna put that in their report as a general rule.
Right.
I know in my current reporting, I note that they were there. I note that we did not test them. And we've been putting in additional notes recommending that they,
Right.
So what are you asking for then?
I'm just asking, it's almost sort of, it seems contradictory that we're saying that, this is what we're supposed to do, but then it's saying also that we have to state whether we were able to test it or not. And we have to state whether we were able to verify the age of it or not. And I think in most cases, that's going to be outside the scope of what we typically do. And most guys aren't going to verify that.
Well, the
It
problem
should be-
is,
Can we
It
change
should-
that to say that,
Is not required to determine, able to test the equipment, and is not required to determine the age of the equipment.
right, so we say, this is what you're going to have to report on, and this is what you're not going to have to report on. I'd say 4 and 5 would be not, you're not going to be
the problem,
required.
the problem that I see, and again, might be misinterpreting, but when I asked, that's the language of the law.
Mhm.
And we can't change the language of the law. We
Okay.
can change our regulations to fit the language of the law. But we're stuck with, and again, Cynthia, maybe you can help out here, but
Yeah.
we're stuck
So-
with 4 and 5. That's the way they passed it. That's what it was
Right.
written.
But then in
that's
number
almost-
6, we say in number 6, that inspector is not required to determine the type or the operation.
Right, and that covers
So, I
us.
mean,
That allows you to say the
That's the
inspector was
backboard.
unable to, based
Right.
on the regulations, the inspector
Okay.
was unable to. You
Okay,
can list that, 2041-13.
So it's being- I think so too. It's making it pretty clear. We're not doing any, warning equipment. We're not the type of it. And we're not operating it, but we do need to report on the presence, the location, the number, and whether they're able to, turn it on or not, and whether
Yeah.
they're able to verify it's less than 10 years old.
Yeah.
Right, and I, to go back to that, the 1 through 5 is almost verbatim for how the law was passed. That's why, that's that language. So we don't have a choice on that. But what I want to be careful of is that we're not defeating the purpose of the change by then, saying the inspector is not required to do X, Y, and Z. I mean, I know that like the way that the law is written, it's saying whether the inspector is able to, what is it, to test it. It's not saying that they're required to test it.
Okay.
So maybe, you know, I don't know, I just don't want to defeat the purpose of the language of the new law by then taking
I'm
away
okay with
that,
that.
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I wanted to just present the question. I think I'm okay with what you're saying.
But does it make sense then to like
Yeah.
keep the general limitations and exclusions, because it does say whether it's not required, you know, the inspector is not
Yes.
required to test it or required to verify that it's less than 10 years old. And maybe there are some people out there that will go up and, you know, dismantle it and inspect it, who knows?
Well, some of the new detectors are labeled right on the side of it.
On
with
this,
date,
right.
So you can see that, but
Right,
on the old ones, you can't tell without dismantling it.
right.
So basically, this regulation or new law is really that the home inspector is going to put in a big disclaimer saying,
Yep.
"We have these detectors. We don't know if they're working or not. We don't even know if they're in the right locations or not. But you really should go out and get more information to make your own determination, make sure they're working and in the right place and you have the right number."
Exactly. That's it. That's it in a nutshell. I mean, this really is misplaced in terms of having us do this stuff. And initially, it started out as an amendment to the seller's disclosure, which is where it should be. But that got nixed through the real estate lobby or whatever. And it got pushed into our regs.
We're just dealing with this in the way we could to make it clear as possible, but basically they're requiring us to put in a big disclaimer saying we don't know anything about this. Go check it out yourself.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm more about, you know, covering us from some potential, you know, over anxious attorney saying, yeah, you should have done all this. And I want to just make sure that we're clear in our regs of what we're supposed to do.
I think with all these changes we're talking, we should just redo it and then take a look at it again at the, you know, next meeting if it's ready.
Well,
and go from there.
should we plan another special meeting before, you know, once we get this done and written?
When's it supposed to go into effect?
As soon as we are able to agree to it, we can put it in anytime. Regulations you can submit at any point. So
Well,
what
that's the key word, Cynthia, is submit. Because you had sent me a regulation review process. And
it's pretty lengthy.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
so what I could do, I could put together a new edit of all of this week. I could email it to everyone, just like we did with the forms for the home inspection interns.
Okay.
And, you know, give me all the feedback. I'll keep editing so that we don't have to wait another 3 months for another meeting.
Yeah, 'cause I'd like to get this going. I mean,
Yeah,
Why?
yeah, and I can just keep editing.
That's fine. Let's proceed that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then, you know, if it gets to a point like by, let's say, January, February, where we've all agreed on all the edits, then maybe we could have a special meeting and, you know, before the March meeting and just agree to it and keep the process going,
Yeah, that's fine.
right?
so we would then, by vote, we would approve these changes.
Right,
And then it'll go to the next step on this regulation review process.
exactly.
Okay.
And I'd
Okay.
have to work with Jerry to put them in. Jerry's our regulation guy.
Okay.
And, you know, he puts them into the system and the rest of it is like witchcraft. Just
Yeah,
keeps
it
going.
seems like it has to go to a bunch of different people. I mean, is there
Right.
like a time frame that you guys have that's kind of on average, or?
I know that I'm really not sure. I know that most of the steps, like each continuing step has its own time frame. Like I know with statutes, I'm not a legislation expert. Like I said, Jerry does our
Mhm.
regs, but I know, like, you know, we just put in some regs for the well drilling, and once it's all agreed to, then it goes to the AG's office. The AG's office has 30 days to respond, you know, so everyone along the way has a time frame so that things hopefully just don't, sit and flounder for months. I don't think that's, anyone's goal.
Yeah,
But yeah, at least, I could put together these edits this week and just keep it going.
and they could kick this out back to us and say, we don't like any of it, you guys start over, right?
I mean, yeah, they can come back and say that, at some point that they think something else should be changed or clarified or adjusted.
Yeah,
You know,
In the meantime, because that law is in effect, what's our liability?
not in effect yet.
It's not,
well,
No.
the law is in effect, but the regs aren't. So that, that's why, the board has the power to pass the regulations with the support of the commissioner. So, once, this is just the part of the process. Once the statute is passed, then the regs have to be adjusted, and, no one expects that to be done overnight. But yeah, it'd be different if we weren't trying to adjust them. So we're moving
Bob,
on it.
Bob,
that's
I
all
have
we
to
can do.
switch to my phone, so I'm gonna switch over to my phone, all right?
Okay.
All right.
Okay. All right. So, are we good then with this part of our agenda? Where we want to go from here? Cynthia, you're kind of going back to the drawing board a little bit on some of these things, and then we'll look for something from you, right?
she's not, oh, she is there, but
Froze.
Is everyone with us, or?
Yeah.
Bruce is there, but he's on mute. I don't see Cynthia.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Bruce, okay. Bob, you here?
I think Bob just dropped off.
Yeah.
Okay, We lost Cynthia, we lost Bob. And so I guess, are we ready then to table this discussion on the regs? Anyone have any other comments about it?
I think we wait till, see what Cynthia comes up with.
They come
Yeah,
back on?
I just got booted off. I'm back in. Whatever just happened.
Okay.
But no,
Okay.
yeah, like I said, I'll get this together. Today's Tuesday. I can get it out by Thursday and just put together the edits, kick it back out to you guys. I'll just make a mass email, and we can keep going.
Okay,
Sounds
Okay.
good.
so that sounds good. I think then we can perhaps move on and table this discussion and move on in the agenda, unless anyone else has any other comments.
Nothing for me.
Okay,
Nope, I'm good.
okay, Bruce is in, Tim's in, Mark's in. Here's Bob, he's back. Okay,
I'm back. I don't know what happened.
yeah,
Sorry about that.
that's all right. We, Cynthia's gonna take and, rework this stuff, and we're ready to table this discussion and move on in the agenda, Bob.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I mean, my VPN's connected. I just lost everything.
okay. I don't
Okay.
believe there's any other old business for us to discuss. Does anyone recall any old business?
Can't think of anything.
Is there any
I don't have
new
anything, Larry.
business? Any new business for us to discuss? No correspondence? Any comments or concerns from any person present today? If not.
I
Yes,
make
maybe
a
we have
motion, we adjourn.
make a motion to
Can I
adjourn. We
make-
have a motion.
Can I ask one quick
Okay.
question?
Sure.
One question, yeah.
Yeah, when this is all said and done, the new regs are written up by us. are we gonna put out a general comment that the home inspectors can use or change to their own liking, but give them some type of sample of what would be appropriate to be used for the reporting system? Or
Yeah,
that's not our responsibility?
well, I had wondered about that myself. At what point do all the home inspectors at large learn that this has been finalized? And it seems like that might be at the end of this regulatory review process. Is that right, Cynthia?
I believe so, yes. But like I said, I could get more information on that from Jerry and Leslie.
Okay.
But
Tim, I'm with you where if we could come up with a basic thing and then people can add to it, but as far as reporting goes, how to,
Right, because at these meetings, it's just gonna open up a whole can of worms. What ifs? What
yeah,
if this, what if that, what if this, and I do this and
Right.
I do that?
Right.
And then we can just simply say, this is a comment that seems to fit our basic needs, and then you can certainly add or take away, to add whatever you want.
Well,
Right.
that goes back to establishing minimal
Yeah.
standard. That's what we're doing.
Standard.
And uniform stuff everybody can do. And then if you want to do more, you can. I've been asked a bunch at various meetings, when do you have anything to report to us and so on, like at CAHI meetings.
Yeah.
And Mark, you have the ASHI group down there in Fairfield. I think once we have approval, then I think that's the time when we probably would make some announcements either through presentation at some of those meetings, and then maybe some other general, not everybody's a member of those groups, so some type of a general announcement. Would that go out through you, Bob, somehow, or that the regulations are now in compliance, that we have to comply with them?
well, I
The new
think that,
law is enacted and we have to comply with them, something like that? I think it's down the road quite a ways, but
well, once the standards have been changed, everybody's, the mailing's gonna have to be mailed out or emailed
Yeah.
out or whatever to everybody.
yeah,
I'd have to look into that to see what the protocol is, once the regulations, officially changed.
Yeah.
Besides just posting it on the website, of course, but
okay.
right,
Yeah.
I'll look into that too. I'm wondering if maybe we can come up with like a frequently asked questions or, just like a one pager
Yeah.
memo of
Yeah.
these are the updates, this is what is being implemented. These are your expectations. Something
Yeah.
simple.
That'd be
Yeah.
good.
But I think at this point, it's anybody asks a question of any of us, it's just that, yeah, we're in the process of working on it. I don't
I
think
just
we
want
want
to giving Larry his phone number out, that's all.
Yeah, you can ask Larry.
Right. No. But no, I would say we're kind of just working on it, and that's going to be the answer until we're done,
Yeah.
until it's approved. I don't know, would anyone like this regulatory review process, just to get an idea of, because either Cynthia, you sent it to me,
I did.
you could maybe
It's
send it
huge.
to everyone else.
I can, yeah.
I can
Yeah.
also scan it and send it myself. But
No, it's
if you-
okay. I have it. I can send it very easily. I'll send it
Okay.
along with the edits.
It
Thank
just gives you,
Okay,
every one of us, an idea of this process and where we are in it. We're like at number one. So there's a ways to go, but it just gives everyone an idea. Okay. So we were back to a motion to adjourn. Do we have a motion?
Motion to adjourn. Motion.
Okay, so Tim, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Rich. Okay, all in favor?
All right.
Aye. Okay. All right, guys. I think we're
thank you.
good.
Okay,
We're good.
have a good holidays, everybody.
Merry
You too,
Christmas.
everyone.
Christmas.
you.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
right.
Thank you.
Thanks for all
Thank
input.
you.
All right, good. Take care.